This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now,
Hello, and welcome to this edition of TBU's Bat Books for Beginners, episode 198. My name is Gerry.
And I'm Chris.
And we are your hosts.
On Bat Books for Beginners, we will examine story arcs with Batman and related characters. We'll give you the historical background of the book, break down the plot and the art, and give you our opinions so you can decide for yourself if they're worth a read.
Today's Bat Book Chris and I are covering is Battle for the Cowl. Chris, tell us a little bit about this book.
Thank you very much, Gerry. Hey, you got some Clapton on today's show.
Yeah, love me some Clapton.
I do too. Very, very cool.
Oh, thank you. It's a pretty song.
Yeah, Gerry, you amaze me again. Outstanding job with that. That's another masterpiece.
Oh, thanks so much, Chris.
Okay, Batman Battle for the Cowl is a 160-page full-color. Hey, how about that full color?
That's full color.
Softcover trade paperback that was released in 2010, and it had a subsequent printing in 2015. Both editions had a cover price of $14.99. In 2009, there was a hardcover edition release that was cover priced at $19.99. The trade paperback collects the 3-issue miniseries Batman Battle for the Cowl. Those issues were cover dated May through July of 2009, and those issues were cover priced at $3.99 each. They were written by Tony Daniel, art by Tony Daniel, and Sandu Florea. It also includes Gotham Gazette, Batman Dead, cover dated May 2009 and priced at $2.99, written by Fabian Nicieza and art by Dustin Nguyen and various. And it also includes Gotham Gazette, Batman Alive, cover dated July 2009, priced at $2.99, written by Fabian Nicieza, art by Dustin Nguyen and various. If you would like to obtain a version of this story, the cheaper route to go may be to go check out Comixology, as the price of this volume was $5.99 at the time of this recording. The hard copy back issues are hovering at about cover price to slightly higher. The hardcover is over cover price, and the soft cover trade is at slightly less than cover price. Okay, for our creative team, as per usual, I'll go off some online sources in my memory. All the big names I think we have previously mentioned on our podcast before. Antonio Salvador Daniel, known as professionally as Tony Daniel or Tony S. Daniel, has worked on various titles. I think I first encountered him on Image Comics' title The 10th. His other credits include, and he's probably best known for his work on DC, including work on Teen Titans, Batman, Detective Comics, Savage, Hawkman, Superman/Wonder Woman, and more recently on Deathstroke. Fabian Nicieza was born December 31st, 1961, making him 57. He was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He was 4 years old when his family moved to the United States. He grew up in New Jersey, and Nicieza learned how to read from comic books. He lived in Sayreville, New Jersey, and moved to Old Bridge Township, where he attended Madison Central High School. Graduated in 1979. Then he was at Rutgers, and he interned at ABC TV before graduating in 1983 with a degree in advertising and public relations. Nicieza's first published comic story came in Cyforce, number 9, cover dated July 1987. Hey, I think I have that one. It's a title in Marvel's New Universe imprint. Now, in 1991, Nicieza joined with artist Rob Liefeld in co-plotting and writing the final 3 issues of the New Mutants title. In those issues, Liefeld and Nicieza created the characters Deadpool and Shatterstar, and as well as the Super Team X-Force. Other credits for DC Comics, though, include Action, Nightwing, and Red Robin. In 2016, for the comics company Shatner Singularity, he adapted a Stan Lee poem into the graphic novel Stan Lee's God Woke. That work won the 2017 Independent Publisher Book Awards Outstanding Books of the Year Independent Voice Award. And finally, we have Destin Gwynn, born in 1976. I likely first encountered his work when it was on Detective Comics, starting back with issue number 840. And that was written with writer Paul Dini. Their run only lasted to issue 852, but after that, the pair launched the title Batman Streets of Gotham. Now, that run lasted 21 issues, and it was canceled in March 2011. In 2012, Gwynn collaborated with writer Scott Snyder on the miniseries American Vampire, Lord of the Nightmares. That made the New York Times bestseller list in 2013. He subsequently launched Batman Lil Gotham with co-writer Derek Friedlofs. It's an all-ages series that was positively reviewed by USA Today. And in rendering that series, Gwynn stated that he drew the inspiration from the cartoons from the 80s and 90s that he viewed in his childhood, and explained, while watching them, you get this goofy sense of the world, unquote. And in 2015, along with writer Jeff Lemire, he launched the creator-owned Image Comics series Descender, for which Gwynn won the 2016 Eisner Award for Best Painter Multimedia Audience. And I have to confess, I've yet to read any of this stuff from Descender, but the people I know insist it's just amazing, and I have to pick this up. Now, as regards to this particular trade, over on Amazon.com, this has a rating of 4 stars out of 5, based on 94 reviews. And over on Goodreads.com, this has a rating of 3.47 stars out of 5, based on 6,209 ratings and 189 reviews. But will Gerry and I have any battles of our own in our respective assessments of this book? Stay tuned, dear listeners, and with that, I shall turn it back over to you, Gerry.
Oh, thanks, Chris. So we're going to talk about this story after a few messages from some of our friends.
When you talk about comics, does it sound something like this?
Look, you can't put the Superman number 77s with the 200s. They haven't even discovered red kryptonite yet. And you can't put the number 98s with the 300s. Lori Lamaris hasn't even been introduced.
Or maybe it sounds a little more like this.
You think Mighty Mouse could beat up Superman?
What are you, cracked?
Why not? I saw the other day he was carrying 5 elephants in one hand.
Boy, you don't know nothing. Mighty Mouse is a cartoon. Superman is a real guy. No way a cartoon could beat up a real guy.
Yeah, maybe you're right. It would be a good fight, though.
Hello, I am the constantly caffeinated Clinton Robinson, and my comics discussions can go to both extremes, but generally fall somewhere in between. On the Coffee and Comics podcast, I will review comic stories and other comics-related topics that can be enjoyed over a cup of coffee. So pour the coffee, or other beverage of choice, and join me on the Coffee and Comics podcast, available on iTunes and coffeeandcomicspodcast.blogspot.com.
Welcome back. Here is the story of Battle for the Cowl. Tim Drake Robin is patrolling Gotham with his new sidekick, Squire. It seems that Gotham's falling apart now that Batman's gone, and the Bat family is importing costumed muscle. For justice, of course. Penguin and Two-Face are having a gang fight with each other. Other small gangs are trying to carve out territory for themselves. Gotham is a bloody mess, and its citizens need help. Robin and Squire chase 3 armed gangsters into an abandoned hospital. After they apprehend them, they find they are carrying a note that says, "I am Batman." The pair race off to assist Nightwing, Huntress, and Knight, who are fighting some pigmen. Eesh. Ugh, yuck, I hate that. Black Mask, who's not dead, obviously, pirates a bus full of prisoners bound for Arkham. He's got an Insta-gang starring Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, and more. He tells them that Batman is dead, and he's putting together a killer gang to take over Gotham. They buy into his crazy scheme. He made it sound so good. Commissioner Gordon, with his police force under political attack, for good reasons, is asked if Batman is dead, and he just doesn't have an answer. Dick Grayson is in the Batcave eyeballing Bruce's Batsuit museum. It's kind of like Cooperstown. Tim suggests that while the Bat family moped about what they should do about the absent Batman, someone else has taken on the mantle, and he's kind of a murderous joke. It's gotta be Jason Todd, Tim deduces. People are kind of telling Dick that he needs to take over as Batman and get over any qualms he has. Dick isn't biting, though, and people are getting on him, but in a nice way, but firmly. Oracle calls Dick and gives him the scoop about the Arkham bus hijacking. Catwoman is out Catwomaning in Crime Alley when a familiar cape and cowl appear in the Gotham sky. Ooh. Also, the rival gangs are messing with each other and cutting off supplies of this and that. Damian is on a date in his souped-up Robin-mobile when Oracle calls him into service. His date gets ejected, but Killer Croc punches the car into a roadside lake. He's set upon by villains, but Nightwing gliders in to fly him out of trouble. Or so they think. They're attacked by Black Mask's men and cornered in a warehouse. However, a pistol-shooting guy in a cape and cowl rushes in screaming, "I am Batman," and kills all the attackers. Kills them! Nightwing is ticked off that this Batman imposter killed a bunch of guys while wearing the bat signal. Like, how dare you? The guy just has a chuckle and leaves. Nightwing and Robin give chase. This guy sure seems to know a lot about the Bat family setup and seems very familiar. Dick figures it's Jason Todd. Fake Bats shoots Damian. Dick gets the wounded kid out of there to get patched up by Alfred. Fake Batman is looking for Black Mask. Alfred guilts Dick into, some more about putting on the Batman suit. Someone in a more classical Batman outfit goes to look for Jason Batman. Is it Dick? He gets a kind of an assist from Catwoman. The pair find Jason Batman's Batcave, and Jason attacks them. He leaves fake Batman number 2 with a batarang stuck in him. Turns out that this fake Batman was Tim all along. Ooh, that's a twist. Turns out Bruce forbade Dick from becoming Batman, so that's why he won't do it. There are reasons. Jason Batman takes Tim Batman hostage. Two-Face launches an attack on the GCPD, and Commissioner Gordon is only saved by his bulletproof vest. The GCPD building is a smoldering mess, and the GCPD starts rounding up main baddies, Penguin, Two-Face, etc. No mention of Black Mask, though. It turns out that Black Mask is claiming victory, with his black mask curiously in his lap. I didn't know he could take that off. Nightwing goes to Jason's Batcave in look at getting Tim back. There are tricks, arguments, punches, etc. Dick plays a hologram of Bruce's last message to Jason, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi or My Only Hope style. It's sweet, and because it's sweet, it angers Jason. There's more punching and complaining about childhoods. Turns out Tim's okay, the batarang wasn't so bad, and he's better now due to these mystical rodent meditations he's into. More Nightwing and Jason fighting. Damian and Squire arrive just in time to save Tim from a big explosion and collapse. Finally, Dick kicks Jason so hard he goes flying off the side of a building or a platform or a canyon or something. They have a give me your hand moment and Jason falls into the sea. No! Dick apparently relents and suits up as Batman. So that's the main story, but we do get a couple of follow-on stories. So the Veil stands on top of Gotham buildings and says poetic things about the state of Gotham. So that's one story. Another one is Vicky Vale is investigating the Batman is missing situation and wants to reconnect with Bruce. He won't call her back because Bruce might be dead, get it? Both your problems are the same problem. Anyway, Alfred probably gets wind of her desire to go to the Robinson Ball, and she gets an invite to the big Gotham soiree. But sadly, Bruce is, quote, away, unquote. At the ball, she sees Tim is all cut up. Hey, now that I think of it, when she used to lay naked in bed, Bruce was awful cut up by scars. He blamed Polo, but now that I think about it, that sounds made up. So she realizes he must be Batman and is now going to try to prove it. Spoiler alert, he is. Speaking of spoiler alerts, Stephanie Brown spends her time using her superhero skills protecting her mom, mooning over Tim and her place in the world, and occasionally stepping out in the spoiler garb. And we get a fight with the villain Nocturna. In another story, Leslie Tompkins, who Bruce knew as a youngster and knows his nighttime gig, returns to Gotham after spending time setting up a free clinic in Africa in penance for faking Stephanie Brown's death, which we've covered on the show before. She has a protector, a man who used to be the Cavalier, but now is just a plain old Mortimer Drake. Who's effective. And finally, Harvey Bullock is investigating the death of someone whose head was chopped off by someone 7 feet tall with a blazing hot sword. He detects that it is someone calling himself by the name of the vigilante Azrael. Who could that be? So those are the stories. Chris and I are going to talk about our feelings for these tales after these words from some of our friends.
Hey folks, this is Jared Albrick, aka the Yard Sale Artist, and semi-regular co-host of the Longbox Crusade podcast with Pat Sampson. Pat came to me recently with a fantastic idea on how we might get the podcast community involved in taking some action to do some good. He called this idea Comics for Courage. Comics for Courage is a concept that came to Pat after I told him the fantastic true story of when I was stationed in Iraq during my military service. While there, I received a huge care package of comic books from the awesome folks over at Wizard and Toy Fair magazines. We had so many comics, we didn't know what to do with them all. Seriously, it was over 100 pounds of comics. So me and a couple of buddies took the bounty of comics we had down to the Give and Take library we'd set up in our headquarters building. And you know what? Within 24 hours, all the comics were gone. The bottom line here is that throughout history, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, one thing remains a constant: soldiers love comics. It's quick, easy, fun reading that gives a soldier a taste of home and lets them escape into an amazing world of comics, even if it's just for a few minutes. So here's the best part of Comics for Courage. Pat and I aren't asking you to donate 1 cent of your money to Comics for Courage. What we would love is for you to donate your excess comics. You know, those ones that are just kind of laying around. Just drop them into a box or a big envelope and mail them over to supportourtroops.org. Their mailing address is Support Our Troops, 13617 North Florida Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33613. Now, they will make sure those comics get distributed to random soldier care packages, and as a person who's been on the receiving end of this, I can tell you it will mean a lot. And if you'd rather donate money than give up a single comic book, trust me, we understand about that. You can donate through their website as well. Again, that's supportourtroops.org. Just remember 2 things, all right? 2 things. 1, make sure the comics have good, clean content. No nudity or adults-only comics, please. Those are the rules for any military member receiving goods downrange. Okay, and number 2, this is the fun one. Please take a picture of you with your donation stack and post it on Twitter or Facebook at Longbox Crusade, or email it to contact@longboxcrusade.com. We'd love to give you an on-air shout-out and post your pic on the longboxcrusade.com website. In summary, Pat and I over at Longbox Crusade Podcast would greatly appreciate you taking this small action to make a difference in the life of someone who is far from home defending our freedoms. Thank you for supporting the Comics for Courage initiative. That website again is supportourtroops.org. Please check it out. Throw them some comics. Make some soldiers happy. We appreciate it. Thanks again.
Welcome back. All right, Chris, what'd you think?
Gerry, this is one where I don't know where to start exactly because we had so many things going on. We've got this big one long fight scene between Dick and Jason. We've got a little bit of subplots going on with other characters. We've got Damian on a date. What is this? Who's this Damian? I don't know. It seems so out of character for me. Well, you know what? Why don't I step back and take get the art out of the way before I forget. I really, really like Tony Estaniel as an artist. He does an outstanding work, and I know when I pick up a book that he did the art in, I'm going to be satisfied with the artwork. No question about it. Sure. That said, I did have some problems with some of the layouts that seem to be kind of like almost director shot-ish, you know, where we got some angles from above, we got some angles from on. There seemed to be a little bit of a gratuitous shot of Black Canary's hindsight in issue number 3 that I thought was pretty unfortunate. I said it before and I'll say it again. I really get a Paul Gulacy vibe with Tony Estaniel, and overall the artwork I thought was really good. It was so cool to see Nocturna again, and some of these other characters from the 80s, you know, back in the Doug Mensch run, I think that was, back in the mid-80s. That was really good. But this seemed to be going in so many places at once, and I just tried to connect with one piece of the story, and it seemed to be top-heavy with the fight scenes and a little under-heavy with some of the other subplot with the other characters. Yeah. So I think I ate too much of the buffet and I didn't leave enough room for dessert, if so to speak, if that makes any sense. Those were my initial broad brush impressions. Gerry, what were your thoughts on this mishmash?
Well, yeah, you know, because Gotham's falling apart, we do get to see a lot of characters. So, you know, we see the Birds of Prey here, we see Poison Ivy, and these are some of my favorite characters. I love the Black Canary, you know, with Oracle and that whole. We
Lady Blackhawk, I think, even showed up.
We saw Blackhawk, absolutely, and I love those characters. But here, you know, usually they put these kind of characters in these big kind of overarching stories for a little bit of fan service. You know, everybody loves Birds of Prey. Let's put them in, and I do, but. For some reason, it didn't grab me. And I'm the target audience for a lot of these characters. This fan service is servicing me. But it still kind of didn't work. There was just something off about this. And you mentioned Damian. You know, who is this kid? You know, he's on a date and they're having these conversations and he's really sharing a lot of details with his date who, you know, if she was, inquisitive at all, she could figure out that, you know, the Waynes are the Bat family. And then Oracle uses the ejection seat to get rid of her. I mean, what?
It seemed like a total out of character moment for me. I just felt, who is this guy and where's the real Damian? You know, I just didn't know what was going on. You know, that was just an odd sequence.
Damian seemed really off in this story. Definitely not the Damian we know and, well, either love or hate or somewhere in between. But also Jason seemed off. This seemed like this came out of nowhere. You know, him putting on the bat suit and then really not thinking at all about his behavior while in the bat suit. He just doesn't seem to care.
Yeah, and I don't know what the initial thought of this was. Usually, you know, couldn't you all sit down and have a chat over dinner about, you know, where you're going to go from here without Bruce? But no, it's just a free for all and just chaos on the streets and chaos amongst the heroes. It was just this bizarre sequence to me. I can't. I'm trying to remember when I read it, and I don't know if I was a little more accepting of this when it came out. But now, all of a sudden, with so much water under the bridge, and just where we are now with the current Bat history and the dynamics of the Bat clan, if you will, it, kind of a weird moment in a blip that I had forgotten about with all these events.
I found that, in that one sequence, where, it's implied that Dick's in the bat suit and then he gets stabbed, but no, wait, it's Tim, it's one of these things that is a twist for a twist's sake. I mean, you're saying, oh, good, it's not Dick. Oh, hold it, it's Tim. This is still bad. This doesn't really change anything. It added more confusion than it added an interesting dimension to the story.
Gerry, I agree with you 100%, and I was a little lost in that place because, here he is in the costume, and I thought, wait, who are you again? What is this? And you shouldn't really have this. He looked more like an adult than his actual true age, I thought, as well.
Yeah, and so you have Jason is in a fake Batman suit, and Tim is in a fake Batman suit. And they look different. They've got, Jason's suit is kind of like a mask on it of some kind. So, and is darker, like almost black. So you can tell them apart, but you have these two fake Batmans and one of them is not the person you think it is. And it was just confusing, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And while I liked the appearance of Nocturna, I don't know where it went. It was a nice sort of snapshot out of time, she's doing the crime with a hot air balloon, back in the day, I thought, oh, how cool is that? We didn't really discuss too much about the Gotham Gazette sequences, and I'd do a disservice if I didn't mention that Gilliam March was one of the creative talent in that with respect to the artwork. And we had the cross-section of all these characters, supporting characters, if you will, with Leslie Tompkins and Harvey Bullock and Stephanie, which I thought were nice sequences. But really, it was tough to distinguish one issue from the next because it almost seemed like they had the same beginning, middle, and the end. And it's almost hard to distinguish the covers by that were provided with this. We had this person framing the story, like the Vale character, aka Millicent Maine, who I had forgotten all about. And if just to paint the picture of her look and appearance, if anybody was familiar with the character Ghost from Dark Horse Comics from back in the day, that almost literally looks exactly like the same character. I thought, oh, what's Ghost from Dark Horse doing in this DC book? And no, it's this other character. She goes by Vale. Really, this is the look you gave her, just down to the T with the white scarf and hood covering her face, and it was just like, man,
okay,
and I was supposed to get this air of mystery. I'm not trying to say that I dislike the character, but maybe more so the appearance of the character. I thought was perhaps a little unoriginal. I hate to bash it a little bit like that, but an intriguing character. But I'm really not sure what exactly her powers were. It seems like she's kind of clairvoyant. She knows everything that's going on, but then. What more? I mean, she's just kind of like, is she like supposed to tell us the story? Does she do any more than that beyond her quote unquote powers? Just weird stuff. I liked the idea and concept of it because you kind of want to know what's going on with these supporting cast, but just how it was executed. I'm not sure I was totally engrossed as I could have been.
Yep, very true. There was one interesting in the Gotham Gazette, one of the issues there. There was an interesting little detail that they were planning something on the intersection of Brayfogle and Wayne Streets.
Nice touch.
I thought that was
I love
great.
touches like that.
Yeah, I love that. So I guess a couple of questions that I have coming out of this is, so if I recall correctly where we are in continuity, the real Azrael is dead, and Jason Todd, the last we saw, Jason was taking over as Azrael. I think we covered this a couple of episodes ago. There was something with Jason and Azrael, so that's leading me to believe maybe Jason's been kicked out of the Batman suit into the Azrael suit. Maybe.
Jerry, I hate to say, well, no one in comics is truly dead, so so I'm kind of trying to wean with this a little bit of a grain of salt, if you will, which maybe isn't fair to a listener, but it's just that I feel so detached sometimes with the characters because with all the multiple recollections, you almost need a scorecard as to who's who and who's coming back, and I'm trying to remember, but I want to say you are correct. But that led me to believe, was John Paul resurrected? I'm not sure. And how many incarnations of the character that we've had in this? I think there was a dude named Michael that did take over at some point, but I'm trying to remember when. I got to think on this because this was such a weird timeline for me and trying to remember all the stuff that went happening.
Well, maybe if folks in the audience that are listening are probably sitting there screaming at us, this is what happened. Please send us comments.
Because he did make a cameo in the Batman Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader, I thought.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, and the other kind of strange thing is in this story is Black Mask is sitting there saying, everything's going great. And his mask is off. I'm not sure we don't see the face. The face is hidden in shadows. I don't think we've seen that before.
I agree. Gerry, has the Black Mask character ever warmed up to you? I think I asked you this on several podcasts ago, but I just never refresh my memory. What do you think of the character, and where would you rank him amongst the Gotham rogues?
I think he's okay. I mean, he's not a character that I dislike. I think he's effective, but he doesn't grab me. This whole false face society and the mask society and all this, secret groups in Gotham that he seems to be part of all the time. Sometimes it's okay. But I think a lot of times it's, just kind of an airball for me. He's a perfectly serviceable gangland style leader villain, kind of more evil than Penguin. So I think he's got his place, but he doesn't thrill me at all. How about yourself?
Well, when the character is introduced, I think they wanted to have like a novel villain as to a near tier villain, and all throughout the years, I always thought they tried to elevate the character to more than what he really was, if you will, which it's a tough trick to pull off when you've got Batman villains that have been around for not centuries, but for years and decades. When you have your Penguins, Jokers, Riddlers, the costume foes, and then you're trying to get a guy with a suit with just a mask on. It's tough, I mean, he doesn't necessarily have a gimmick or a shtick, if you will, but it just never resonated with me. Some of the characters, some of his stories resonated with me and had more weight than with the others, if you will. There was some stuff that he had in the Batman Adventures animated comic, of all things, that I thought really did a superior job of his depiction and really nailing the heart of the character down. Here, he just seems to bark orders a lot, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, you're telling Killer Croc what to do? Shouldn't it be the other way around? I mean, so it's tough. It's tough for me to get a handle on him. I always thought he was sort of more or less a B villain as opposed to an A-list villain for me.
I agree, and he should stay away from Stephanie Brown because we're not going to have this again.
Yes.
No. So if you would rate this or think of it as a must-read or recommend, where would you come down on that?
Gerry, it was weird because I started at 2.5 out of 5, then I went up to a 3, then I saw the cheesecakey shot of Canary. That kind of took me out a little bit. So. But, it was an okay read. I think I'm going to... 2.5, I'd have to say that was average, and I'm torn between a 2.5 and a 3 because I thought there were some elements of this that were above, but then it landed below. The needle kept on going up and down for me. Yeah. I think when the dust clears, I'm going to have to settle at a 2.5.
Okay.
It's decent. It's certainly not you could do worse by Batman trade standards. You could do worse by story art, the way it was written. You could do worse by artwork, but there were some things that were just too confusing, too drawn out with the fight, and just not enough depth. And I felt a little lost with some heart in some places where there should have been some heart. Yeah. Would I say it's a must-read? No. Would I recommend it? Gerry, I'm going to do this, which I've never done on the show before. Mm-hmm. Now, for readers of the current Nightwing title, if you miss that incarnation of Dick Grayson that you know and love, and you just kind of want a palate cleanser after you've read current Nightwing, if you can find this at a local library or a cheap deal at a bookstore, go for it. You're going to get some great Nightwing stuff here. If you're a fan of Jason Todd, check this out just to see, hey, where was this guy's head at the time? This is kind of an interesting character study, because there's so many different versions of Jason. Where you see him now is a totally different version that you see back then. Yeah. And I think it would do well to remember that if you're a huge Jason Todd fan. Now, this window of recommendation is probably going to close at some point, but in the here and now, at the time of this recording, I'm going to say I will give it a recommend for Nightwing fans only. Okay. How about you? What was your rating, and would you say this is a must-read and recommend? I agree with your range. I could talk myself into a 2.5 or a 3 pretty easily. I think Jason and Damian are written unusually. Tim, this is decent. Tim, I like. I'm a Tim fan, so that's okay. So I think, I'll say 3 just to be different right now, but I could see a 2.5 very easily. The only thing I would think of this as a must read is, we're coming up to Dick taking over as Batman, and we do see him first put on the cape and cowl. And there's a struggle as he's struggling to do it, and there's a little background. Batman told him not to, and now he's going to do it at the end. So if you really want to see that happen, then you should read this. But otherwise, there's a lot better stories out there to get your teeth wet, sink your teeth into. Well said, Jerry. Well said. Thank you. Well, that's all we have for this issue. But, there's a lot of things that Chris and I do out there on the interwebs that you can see us other places, can't you, Chris? Yeah, thank you so much, Jerry. You can also find me on the Batgirl to Oracle podcast. Right now I'm reviewing the Batman Adventures title that was done in the 90s, based on the 90s animated TV series. Yes. And it's a nice deep dive. I also got a segment within a segment called Night Watch, where I look at the Nightwing title from a shipper perspective. So I'm also looking at Archie meets Batman 66, which is coming to a conclusion, so that portion of the show is going to go away until some new Batman 66 material comes along, hopefully soon. Yeah. You can also find me on a new podcast called Trust Your Cape, and the feed is over on Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop, and that's where we're doing a online role-playing game. Fantastic. So the first episode is out there. And we're going to probably do our next one soon. I think Bob's got some ideas with the respect to individual adventures for the specific characters. Ooh. And then he's going to bring us back as a group again. So we've got some things in the work. Again, if you want to check that out, please check out Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop, and that's a show in and of itself you're going to like anyway, because it's hosted by Bob and Barbara, and they're going to talk about Bob, has read comics pretty much all his life. Barbara's a comics newbie, and they just do some great discussions with comics. The last one I heard was Barbara was trying to get into the X-Men, and hearing her thoughts on the X-Men was just so hysterical. Oh yeah, every show is a treat. Every show is just a must listen, and I have to give them applause with all the things that they bring into it. The dramatization reads are marvelous, and it's a wonderful show. And I'm very fortunate to be a part of Trust Your Cape. Great stuff. Which you can find on Twitter at Trust Your Cape. So please follow us there on Twitter as well. Jerry, I know you're doing some written reviews at the BatmanUniverse.net. In particular, 2 of my favorite characters, Batgirl and Catwoman. Can the listeners find your written articles there, my friend? Absolutely. You can go over to the BatmanUniverse.net, and I've been covering Batgirl and Catwoman now. I've been doing them both for quite a while, and off and on. Catwoman I've been doing for a couple of years now, off and on. So these are both books that are in really good runs right now, and definitely recommend check out the reviews if it sounds like a book that you'd be interested in. And you see them in the comic shop. Definitely recommend either of those books. Would be a good read. Great. And Jerry, can the listeners find you on Twitter as well, my friend? Sure can. You can find me on Twitter at Professor Frenzy, and out on Twitter I tweet my weekly comics, and there's always good conversations around what comics everybody's getting on Wednesdays, and we talk about a lot about indie comics. And
tweet, looking at Dark Shadows and music. And of course, you cannot forget that we live tweet horror movies at the hashtag Svengoolie at 8 Eastern time on Saturday nights. And we always have a good time. We had a good time last night.
Good time last night. At the time of this recording, last night's feature was Valley of the Giants, which I had not seen in a long, long time, with Ron Howard as one of the cast. This was a Bird Eye Gordon directed bit, and hysterical. Perfect movie for Svengoolie. And Freddie Cannon, of all people, also showed up in the movie. That was good.
And Tony Basil.
Tony Basil, my gosh, she talented. Could dance a storm.
Boy.
Joy Harmon from Cool Hand Luke, washing scene, and I think she appeared on Batman as a pageant contestant in an episode. Tommy Kirk and Johnny Crawford. Yeah, from The Rifleman.
And Beau Bridges.
Beau Bridges, yes.
Wow. Such a great cast.
What a cast. Some groovy dancing and some trippy music and a lot of fun.
It was the 60s after all.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. And, Gerry and I sometimes get on board for Wonder Woman a little before that, and Wild Wild West, which was just a fun show back in the day. And just all the weird scenarios of that happened to Jim and Artemis with the surreal prisoner vibe in one particular episode that we saw. And Gerry, I hung around for Buck Rogers, which I usually don't do, but I hung around for Buck Rogers and followed along. And it was the Olympiad episode where they have these Olympics, and it seems to be just you'd think the grand spectacle of the Olympics, it's going to be in a wide open space, and here we are in the future, and it looks like it's just maybe in 1/4 of a gym.
Oh, man.
All the events are going on in the Olympics in the 25th century, and I guess some budget constraints. What can you do? But you do the best you can, and you try to sell it. And the Olympiad of Buck Rogers in the 25th century is one of my favorite episodes, just for the earnestness of trying to pull it off. And as people pointed out when that issue came out, I think this was during the U.S. boycott with Russia, so you had that going on at the same time.
So it took the place. It was a substitute for the real Olympics.
Exactly. That's what the person tweeted out. That was our Olympics, if you will. So. But to bring it back home, a lot of fun live tweets on Saturday nights.
Oh, so much fun. So now Chris and I also, don't forget to check us out on the Professor Frenzy Show. Professor Frenzy Show is where Chris and I talk about indie comics. And by the time this episode is aired, we will have released, 37, 38 episodes of that show. And we've been having a great time. So check that show out too, the Professor Frenzy Show. Search on iTunes, and we're also, it's showing up on YouTube now. So, if you want to go over to YouTube, check that out.
Yep. Hey, Gerry, guess what? We got some comments from our last episode, and this was the one where we reviewed Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader by Neil Gaiman and Andy Kubert. And seminal, memorable story for people. And we heard from our good friend Green Lantern HG on Twitter. And Green Lantern HG chimed in with this. He said, "This one hits home. Batman, Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader is the first back book I got. For a beginner, I would say you're dead on in your description. I try to read it once a year, and every time I find something new. Great episode, guys. As always, smiley face emoji, thumbs up." How cool is that?
Awesome.
If that was the first bat book you got, Gerry, to kind of assess something where we were, and having reread it, giving our take on it, and we were coming at this as people who have had a lot of Batman stories under our belt already and convey at this. But to hear somebody as that was their first story really kind of resonated with me in a way. I thought, what a unique take and perspective to come in on that of all things. Yeah,
I love the story, and I thought that on the one hand it could be confusing for a first time reader, but I hoped that, with that perspective, it would kind of feed that perspective. And it sounds like for Green Lantern HG, it sure did.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to remember the first Bat book I got. It was probably a 100-page reprint from the early 70s that reprinted the Detective Comics story, the two-part story with the Vampire the Monk. Ooh. And I think that was DC 100-page spectacular. I think they called it just DC 14. And I think that was my first Batman comic right there.
Okay.
And even then, I knew it was like this was an old story. I knew that it was not a contemporary Batman story, and it just had that eerie vibe and feel. And boy, was I hooked on that. I just read that over and over and over again.
Yep. That did it.
That did it.
And here we are.
Here we are, all these years later.
Yep.
Well, we also heard from Ian via Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Great episode, a reality-bending but ultimately very moving pair of issues. While these issues don't have much to do with anything before or after them in continuity, they are fascinating meditation on Batman by some top talent. Yeah. Well said, Ian. Yes. And Gerry, I want to give you a particular shout-out because I think you really did a great job with the episode recap on that.
Thank you.
I think that one was one of our better episodes where we had just great conversation and back and forth with our takes on that one. I can't... I always enjoy podcasting, but this one seemed more conversational, and just to hear different perspectives and how we came at this, I thought that was one of our better episodes.
Yeah, I agree.
We also heard from Laurel on Twitter, and she said, on the Bat Books for Beginners, I listened to your Batman RIP episode, was surprised how high you guys rated it. I want to dig in my issues and compare this from the library to see the trade paperback from the library to see what the differences are. Right. She also continues, I did read Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader and loved it. It's been years since I read those two issues, but the part that sticks with me is when he learns that his reward for being Batman in any of his possible lives was to have his parents for the years he did. As I said before, when the Christmas boxes get moved, I'm going to get my Batman boxes out and I'll reread these. Hey, Laurel, thank you so much. And if you're listening right now, my personal apologies go out to you because in my haste to record my last segment for Batgirl to Oracle, I was on got a new computer, and I didn't have time to include your comments for my segment on that last episode. So my deepest apologies. I hope you'll continue to listen to this show and Batgirl to Oracle and keep your comments coming.
Absolutely.
And hey, we also got a direct message on Twitter from Bill Cipher. And shout out to Bill Cipher. Thank you so much, Bill. And Bill's at Twitter at TIOCOY. I think that's Tiocoy, if I pronounce that correctly, Bill. My apologies if I mispronounced that. He sent us a link to a great article on Comic Books Resources about this particular story arc. And we can't thank you enough for sharing your insights. That was really, really thoughtful of you, Bill, and thank you so much. And let's see, we got likes and retweets on our past episode from the following. We heard from Bill Beer at Gotham Knight 13. He's the host and creator of The Bat Pod, which you can find on Twitter at PodBat. Thank you so much, Bill. We heard from Reggie at Reggie, co-host of the Cosmic Treadmill podcast and contributor to Weird DC Comics. And a shout out to Reggie, too, for his outstanding articles doing the deep dives on the Lois Lane comics title. And just hysterical articles in there. So great thoughtful, funny, well-written stuff from all the silliness from Silver Age Lois Lane, and bringing up some memories that, boy, I had forgotten how far out and wacky the Silver Age Lois Lane was. So thank you so much, Reggie, for going through those and putting your thoughts out there in those articles. Keep them coming. Good friend, Soundtrack Ellie. Hey, he's on Twitter at Soundtrack Ellie. Thank you so much, Randy. We heard from Lord Jack at Comics. We heard from Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop at Gal Walks, as previously mentioned. Now, this is a podcast with Bob and Barbara. Bob knows comics. Barbara never read them in her life, but she's getting more versed. As we said, the last episode was their take on Barbara's examination of X-Men for the first time and her thoughts and opinions of some of those stories. And I'm trying to think of a good X-Men story to recommend to Barbara. And I thought Bob did some great analysis with respect to the characters in comparison to the other origins of the Marvel character universe at this time. And the examination of mutants. Just a lot of history they covered and a lot of ground covered in that episode. My applause, guys. You did an outstanding job with that one.
For sure.
Oh, speaking about outstanding jobs, Hicks at Reading_Hicks, co-hosted with at Avantgarde, they both do the Doom Patrol podcast. An outstanding show. High recommendation for that. You can find that on Twitter at WFDpod, and also the outstanding DC Events podcast. Great job where you're rating all these DC events and ranking them in order and seeing how they stack up with other DC events. You can find their Twitter feed at DCOCDcast. Well done. We heard from Warlord Worlds at Warlord Worlds. That's a fan podcast devoted to the comic creations of writer and artist Mike Grell, including Warlord, John Sable, and Green Arrow. Hey, it's a part of the Rad Adventures Network with our friends Darren and Ruth. Hey, speaking of good friends, we heard from Dave at Lava Hog at Lava Hog. He's the creator of the Selling Out Show. Speaking of the Selling Out Show, you can find them at Selling Out. Fine stuff there.
Definitely.
Good friend of ours, Sean. Hey, Sean. Oh. Sean's Secret Words and Beyond podcast at Sean42AZ on Twitter, co-host of the Secret Words and Beyond podcast on the Pump the Pixel Network, and Nerdy Dads on the Nerdy Dads Network. Fine stuff. Sean, and always look out for Sean when he's ever guesting on a show, which he does frequently because he always does an outstanding job.
So good.
Clinton at Coffee and Comics at Coffee and Comics blog. Oh, Clinton, thank you so much. We heard from Batman America 10 at Batman America 11. How about that? Once again, Green Lantern HG at Green Lantern HG, longtime supporter of our shows. Thank you so much. Yeah. We heard from Austin Kuykendall at Freebird316. Thank you very much. And if I overlooked you, my sincerest and deepest apologies. Let Gerry know on Twitter at Professor Frenzy, or let myself know at B2 on Batbooks, and we'll be sure to mention you on our next show. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes, thanks, everyone. Well, that's all we have for today. Please join us next time where Chris and I will continue our coverage of Battle for the Cowl.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, here we go. My name is Gerry.
Thank you, and I'm Chris.
And thank you for listening to Bat Books for Beginners.